Good evening to all of you, our cherished viewers of TV3 and our listeners on 3FM 92.7, and welcome to Eye on the Seat. So, on Wednesday, the Parliament of Ghana passed the amended Presidential Transition Bill. Now, the bill is supposed to help, resolve the administrative lapses and certain challenges with Ghana's transitional process. This evening, we'll look at the amended Presidential Transition Bill. We want to understand what actually led to its amendment and what are the new provisions in the bill and how would that affect Ghana's transition process. This is Eye on the Seat with me, Winston, and the program is sponsored by TV3 Network with support from Star Ghana. Star Ghana strengthening transparency, accountability and responsiveness through transformational national development and accountable public services for all Ghanaians. We'll go for a short break. When we return from the break, I'll introduce my guest for tonight. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back from the break and thanks for staying with us. This is Eye on the Seat on TV3 and also live on 3FM 92.7. Now, from my far left is the Administrator General of the Presidential Estate Unit under the Transitional Act, David Yaro. Next to him is Professor Bafo Ajimandua, who is a former UN Senior Governance Officer for the UN mission in Liberia. And then George Low, Honorable George Low, is MP for North Dartey, as well as the Vice Chairman for the Constitutional Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Gentlemen, good evening and thank you very much for joining us.
Welcome.
And I hope you're doing very well.
Yeah.
Good. So since we're talking about the amended Presidential Transition Bill, let me start off with you, Honorable George Low. Now, what necessitated this amendment?
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to our cherished viewers. I'm not too sure if I am the person to be answering this question. Maybe the Attorney General should, it's their bill. You know that all bills are, as it were, brought to Parliament by the Attorney General.
Exactly, but once they bring it, they tell you why they need to go through. Yes, and that's how come we wanted to understand it. Yes.
Definitely. We've, as you would have known, we've had the amendment transition bill. We've practiced it once, but we found out during that process that there are some loopholes that needed to be sealed, and of course some other areas that needed clarity. It means that it didn't go as smoothly as we would have expected. So the Attorney General, I'm sure Cabinet took a second look at the law again and decided to do some amendments to be able to straighten the places where there were few.
Could you share with us some of the loopholes and some of the areas that weren't going on well and so needed amendment?
First of all, you would notice that in the old bill, or in the bill that the earlier bill, you had some number of people, whether it's an incumbent who has been re-elected, or that there's a new person coming in. And of course, we thought that the size was too big, and that if, say, the incumbent is returned to office, I mean, we didn't need to bring in all those numbers. We needed to cut the numbers, and then it leads to the cutting of cost, So, and then so we have a specific number if it is somebody coming in fresh, and then where it is the incumbent person, specified persons are there. And then, of course, for smooth transmission of business, we've also brought the quorum to 1/3, so that once 1/3 of members are gathered, they can have a business. Because if, other than that, you have all these challenges that come with. We've also set a cap now on the time frame. In the past, transition from the way the law was crafted, you could have a transition that will run for 3 months, for 6 months, whatever. Now we are saying it should run for 6 weeks.
All transitions, 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Within 6 weeks, the process should be.
And that starts from what period?
Yeah, I mean, immediately the transition kicks in. When you go to the specific, you see that when an incumbent or when a president has been elected, he has a certain time within which to name a transition team. And so, if it's an incumbent, Mr. Speaker and 2 advisory committee members, and then some particular government officials. If it's if it's a new person coming in, he also has a team that he's allowed to bring in, and they must do their work within 6 weeks. We've also given the Administrator General some new powers. If you go to their act itself, that governs them, they have quite a lot, but specifically in this amended bill, we have given them powers, even powers of eviction, where in the past you hear that somebody is still in a government bungalow after a year and it becomes all the politics that surrounds it. Somebody is still keeping a government car after 6 months when he's left office. Now we've given the Administrator General powers, to retrieve, government property and all that. So that is some of these are some of the things I'm sure Professor Ajimandia and the Administrator General himself will share.
Exactly. I'll get Professor Ajimandia, but I want to go to Mr. David Yarrow, the Administrator General, because not long ago he was complaining he had certain challenges. Now, Mr. Yarrow, these challenges, from what we've heard, have been addressed for you. Something that brings you excitement?
Well, to an extent, as I said, I haven't had occasion to look at the amended bill yet, but if incidentally, Honorable hasn't mentioned that aspect, but let me say that before the Attorney General brought this, and they called me, they wrote me to express my concerns and my contributions, and I made known to them. And
so at least you knew.
Well, I don't know whether they took everything on, but for example, I just mentioned membership of the transition committee, and if you look at the old bill, even though the Administrator General is supposed to provide administrative technical support to that team, I'm not a member of that committee, so I was wondering how. So it means that even meetings of the committee will be at the pleasure of the chairman, and the subcommittees at the pleasure of the chairman of subcommittees. If they say they don't need me, they don't need me. Meanwhile, when an issue crops up and I am to make a follow-up or to see to its implementation, how do I go about it when I'm not a member? So I raised this issue. So I don't know whether this bill has addressed that. If still I'm not a member, then my concerns have not been answered yet. Then there were other areas. Well, those maybe could come up when there's a legislative instrument. But I also was wondering, if you look at government assets and properties, it looks too wide. We wanted a narrowing up. For example, we taken in consideration lands, that belong to government. But we realized the Lands Commission is also doing this. Then we saw there could be conflict. We wanted to know exactly which constitutes this land that should be run by the Lands Commission and which we should, be in charge. I don't know whether the honorable members looked at that, And a few areas that we raised, and until I see the bill, I wouldn't say I'm totally happy, but I'm happy that, because one of the challenges that I also enumerated when I met the press was the ability to enforce. But now, Honorable has mentioned as one of the amendments, so that one, we are quite happy about it. But again, we were just discussing, I said, even then, there are a lot of things that will come out, unless maybe the ally will address that, because the bungalows and whatnot that I am to enforce are under the purview of the Ministry of Water Resources, Works and Housing. They do the allocation, they do the ejection, they do everything without any recourse to my office. So
you know the government bungalows, don't you? They've submitted a list of the government bungalows.
Yes, but who is there at one time, I wouldn't know, because I haven't allocated.
But they didn't add whoever was in there to you?
Yeah. For example, we did this in 2012. And then this year, because we are coming to an election, I wrote for information, an update. So within this time, and again, 2020, people would have left and all those things. So if you allocate without telling me, I only go to my Moruban records.
Yes, but you've written for an update.
Yes.
They're supposed to update you.
Yes,
as we speak,
yes.
Have they updated you?
No, they are still compiling. They haven't updated.
They're still compiling.
Yes.
We have about, some 40 days to the elections, and once the president is elected, the process must begin.
Yes.
And so if you don't have it as we speak, I mean, what's the proof that you'll be able to have it in time
no, the difference,
in order to fulfill your mandate?
The difference will just be changes in personnel. As for the bungalows, they're fixed assets. And unless a few bungalows have been added in the process.
Exactly the point.
It is
and that happens every now. Government is always in the business of constructing new bungalows. So you might never know which ones have been added to it. So clearly
So we've given them a deadline. At the end of this week, that is tomorrow, we should have had this. In fact, it's just the Ministry of Works and Housing and then PW Prestige. They just liaise and give me the information. So it's not going to be any big deal. So that one is under control.
I see Professor Bafo Ajimandia making a sign that suggests that it's going to be a big deal. What is the big deal in here?
It's a big deal, because if the Administrator General is saying that he has no direct access to as well as control over state assets, which he's supposed to administer, it's a big deal. You see, if the Minister of Works and Housing, as he said, still controls government houses and that location and all that, that ministry is part and parcel of the executive government. But I think the new system that the bill is introducing is trying to bring some kind of transparency and accountability in the management of assets of state. In this case, houses, bungalows, whatever. Okay? So I think if you take examples from other countries, US, even Liberia, where I was, they have Administrator General for these kinds of matters. They take inventory every year of government assets so that you can have an independent body, just as we have created, to have an effective monitoring and control over state assets. So if he says that, even though this bill is giving him the power to enforce or to monitor, but somebody has to provide him with information before he can act, and I think there's a certain lapse there. I wish the new bill has empowered the Administrator General to be able to directly control these assets and manage them on behalf of the state. That's why when he said the Ministry of Work still control these things, it kind of jerked me a little bit. Okay? But I think overall, the amendment is an improvement over the previous one, as the Honorable MP said. But then again, listening to the Administrator General, he's talking about the lands. They have not resolved the issue of who controls government lands or state lands. Currently, before this Administrator General office was created, the Lands Commission was in charge. And I understand the Lands Commission is still in charge. And he raised a very interesting, very crucial point. Who then is managing state lands? How do we know about allocations, transfers? If he doesn't know, how can he account for these things at the end of the year? So I think there are still some very important lapses, if according to what I'm hearing is the case. There are still some serious lapses. It's as if we want to do the right thing, but somehow we are hesitant to take the necessary steps to do the right thing. So maybe, like you say, it's a beginning. But I think as you move along, one of the beautiful things about democracy is it's a work in progress. So we can take this as work in progress. But as we move along, we need to tighten the rules, the regulations, and the law so that it can become an effective instrument to take care of state properties and assets.
Like, just to add,
yes, Mr. Yarrow.
If you look at the old law, it says that the Presidential Estates Unit is responsible for the procurement of any assets or properties of government.
Exactly.
But let's take vehicles, for example. The Office of the President procures, ministries, department agencies, they procure, regional coordinating councils, they procure. So which assets am I supposed to procure? And what do we mean here by procuring government assets?
Well, let's get some clarification. Yeah. Honorable Noah is a lawyer also, so maybe he could help us.
So if all these things haven't been looked at, unless we assume that an LI will come and look at these things, then the law still has a lot of problems.
It's raised that question. He's supposed to be responsible for the procurement of government assets, and he's saying, well, the Regional Coordinating Council does it, the Office of the President does it. So at the end of the day, what powers does he have?
Well, well that's interesting. And let me say that we've had cause to deal with all these things at the committee level, and we looked at all of them. You see, in trying to streamline, and I think Prof makes a very important point, streamline and bring in transparency and efficiency in our transition process. We shouldn't create another bureaucracy. You see, the Administrator General, if you ask him to procure all government property, then he can't do anything. If ministries are procuring hundreds of cars, they are doing procurements on daily basis and things like that, how is he able to do all that?
So why did we put it there then?
Wait. You see, listening to the language of the law, he is, technically speaking, if you look at the interpretation of how his office is defined, he's supposed to be technically presidential households and things like that. I believe that even when it comes to procurement, what we should be working at, and I think that informally we're discussing it, at all material times, the Administrator General should be in the know of what government is procuring. He should be in the know what houses government is building. He should be in the know when government is either taking state land or ceding state land out, so that he can give us a record of that. He is virtually like not an estate manager simply, but he's also like a trustee. Okay. In that process, I was telling him, for instance, that Ministry of Works and Housing, because they must do repairs, because they must do renovations and things like that, and then they do allocation. But the practice should simply be that any time, and I believe that some of these things will be taken care of in the LI, but which we've now empowered the Attorney General to draw. But I'm saying that if we are allocating a government bungalow to public officer A, whose remit falls within the Administrator General, that Mr. should be copied. He should be in the know. So, Ministry of Work and Housing, as we always do, when we are hiring people, the Minister of Finance is giving a copy, the Controller Accountant General is giving a copy to be able to track. So, it's an administrative system that needs to be built, so that at all material times, we are all on the same page. Then everybody can do their work. Because if you give all the work to one person, it means that what we seek to cure would go back there and also create a bottleneck. Don't forget that, yes, you have a bureaucracy, but the law doesn't intend to build such a huge bureaucratic system. It's supposed to be trail of paperwork.
The law intends to give, give him notice. So whatever they do.
Not that the law intends to give him notice. I am saying that conventionally, I don't think that the law says that when you hire, you should give Controller Accountant General a copy. But we've developed that convention because she pays salaries. The minister should budget for workers. You know, the regional director should know how many people is being paid. So all these things are things that are natural and flow from the law. The law cannot make provision for every iota.
Because when the law says shall be responsible for the procurement, and that's where Mr. David Yarrow comes in. He says the law says you should be responsible for what? The procurement. Can you just read that part again so that we can go through the analysis? I just want to understand.
Yeah, but I'm saying that that's the old law.
That's the old law, yes.
You see, they will make allies to straighten those parts. I'm saying that practically, we've discussed in that committee, practically, he himself will be inundated with so much work that he will not do any work again.
Actually, our understanding is that we should keep
track
a database.
Yes, that is it.
So do you have that database? I mean, whenever there's a procurement, for instance, yes, it has been done, but are you told, okay, so Administrator General, this is what we have done?
It's not happening. That's why it's
yes, and at that moment, don't forget that we are dealing with a transition amendment bill that has passed through Parliament. Yes. We haven't been notified of a presidential assent or a gazette yet. So clearly it still largely remains a bill. So he cannot even start working with this until...
Yeah, but he's working with the old one now. I mean,
yes, but I'm saying that...
So that's the one in force now.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's correct. But
and that's where the challenge is.
That's why we seek to cure some of those challenges through this bill. Now that it has passed through Parliament, we believe that once the President gets back to his office, we expect, because of the urgency of the situation, he will append his signature. If he doesn't do it and he returns to Parliament or whatever it is, well, hard luck. But for now, I believe we are discussing how we are curing the defects in the old law, and that is why we are, in this, we are positing what the way we are doing it.
Now, Professor Ajimandia, looking at the time in it, I mean, it says that you have 6 weeks to do the transition. Now, assuming we're in December, I mean, we're in October, assuming we go into a runoff, it means the president will be declared probably around the 30th, 31st, 1st January. Would have 6 weeks, that is 6 weeks into the next term, there are many who have argued that why don't we start early to ensure that at the end of it all, everything will be done, even before the handing over. In other jurisdictions, the transition is done, ended, before the handing over.
Actually, maybe it's part of the teething problems we are having as we develop our democratic structures. Because certainly these things should have been clear long ago. There's no doubt. We don't wait till 6 weeks to elections or so before we pass or you amend such an important bill. And it seems like Ghana, we are getting used to last-minute things. Again, it's also a little bit unfortunate that Parliament was unable to pass the new law that would have brought the elections forward to November 7th. That would have given a small room between November 7th and January, the inauguration. Such things could have been taken care of. Having said that, I think we just have to face the reality. In my humble view, it's not going to be possible to perfect this law before the current transition, because there are so many loopholes. In fact, listening to the Administrator General, it's clear that even though Parliament had done its best to review and update the old law, I think there's still a big room for improvement.
What is that big room for improvement? Where do we need improvement?
First of all, I'm not sure. I mean, the Administrator General is saying that he doesn't have a database for the assets he's supposed to control. He just said it. And I don't know his office, how many computers he has and how much information he has received from the various state agencies that needs to feed his database. If all those things are not there, then effectively, how is he going to manage these things? So I think the focus may be on the immediacy of the transition, which I find here. For instance, reconstituting the team, now giving a precise number of 13, indicating that even if you're an incumbent, unlike the old law, if you're an incumbent, the transition was not clear. Now it's clarified. Even if you're incumbent, you have to set up advisory committees so they can help you quickly. But of course, if it's a transition from incumbent to itself, it's much easier. I mean, even if there are some difficulties, it can be easily contained. But if it's a transition from a party to a different party, in other words, one government to another kind of government, then the challenge can be real. And we saw those challenges in the past transitions. That's why this law, for instance, should have been dealt with long ago for the Administrator General to be capacitated to do what he has to do. Nonetheless, I think if we are able to support him to do the necessary transitional arrangements, basically the presidential things. As for the housings and all that, as I said, as we move on, we can find better ways to really make it become more effective as we have in other countries. So all is not lost. But I think what he needs to do to function from now until January 7th, that one we should help him to do his work so that the transition can be smooth, even if there's a change in government.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Yaro.
Yeah, in anticipation of these things and having looked at the problems, this is what the office has done to solve a lot of these problems. We looked at the template that we used in writing the handover notes for the last transition, and we saw a lot of loopholes. So we made amendments to that. We called all chief directors of the ministries, we discussed with them, they made inputs. Then we made them to give us first drafts of handover notes for us to be sure. We set up a quality assurance team, they looked at it, did everything before final. And the changes we made was that, for example, we have an appendix. One appendix is asking that it should capture all government bungalows under each ministry. Another is to capture all vehicles under ministry. Another personnel, everything. So in the end, when you are submitting your handing over notes as a ministry, all these things are taken into consideration. And luckily, as you said, initially we didn't have these things to work with. We appealed to deliver one of the NGOs, and they gave us 5 computers and other things. Yes.
NGOs should not be providing this.
So
it's a serious government business.
But that's a fact. He said that
yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, well, we didn't have. So we have now started, we have already, fortunately, my planning officer who was in charge of this had his own desktop computer. So he was, so we have transferred everything now on this thing. And with the handing over notes, the copies that we get, we update. So by the time the handing over, in fact, they were supposed 25th, that's yesterday, to have been lodged with the office of the president. So all this information will be at the office of the president, and we will also have a database of it. So in a way, we've taken care of that. So we
But
don't.
just by the question you asked, I need to get an answer to that. Is he part of, is he a member of the transitional committee?
If you look, I think that the list is
He's not.
Well, I don't know whether the new bill.
Yeah, the list is here. He said, and I believe that I because I thought that we're just dealing with amendments, I didn't bring the old bill. But if you can give me the old bill. Let me.
Yes, that's.
The membership.
I'm just yes. Remember, I'm just looking at the.
Let's just look at the old one and do a bit of analysis with the new one.
No. What I'm looking for is very different.
No, I
you
mean,
see,
yes.
over here we have the head of the Presidential Staff appointed under the Presidential Office Act 1993. So I think that's the administrator general, not it.
No.
That's
This is a new one.
This is
the new one.
Yeah, this
the
is
new membership.
yes. Okay, then this is a new membership.
Yes, and he's not there.
He's not there.
Exactly.
He's not there. But we have quite 13 of them.
But you could, but you definitely would be part of the meetings, wouldn't you, Mr.
Well,
Yari?
they invite you at their discretion.
But how does that
Say
affect the
it
process in
shouldn't
itself?
be.
Professor Bafagman, if he is not a member, and so at their discretion they could call him and say, come attend the meeting, how would that affect the process?
You see, the Administrator General's office has been created and it has a huge responsibility. But the way I'm seeing it now, that office has not been empowered to do the job that it's supposed to do. Because first, if in fact he's not a member and he has to be invited at the discretion of the committee, then we are not sure. And this person, by the way, is supposed to be in charge of the assets that are going to be discussed by this committee. Maybe not being a member will limit your ability to go and report and all that, but it won't be that effective. So as I said earlier, it's a great step forward, but there are a lot of loopholes here that we need to fill. Because ultimately, you see, I don't know, maybe the Honorable MP can tell me. I haven't heard of government inventory being announced anywhere. I'm not familiar with that. In other words, every year, how do we know that our country, the state, has 100 cars, 1,000 houses, you name them, so many things. And so many things go wrong. People mismanage them. In fact, in some cases, stories come out, a certain minister has appropriated a state vehicle. But you don't know how many have been appropriated previously that nobody mentioned. But if the Administrator General is doing his work and is empowered properly to do so, then one can expect that every year or every other year, at least this office will let us know in the inventory what we have. The whole idea is not just to help transition, but also to manage state assets that have not been managed so well over the years. That's the way I see it. So maybe, as I say, the conception for this transition was more or less focused on moving from one president to the other. That's why perhaps you've been limited in terms of your powers and your accessibility to things and all that. But I think as we move forward, I think Parliament, and I'm glad my brother parliamentarian is here, listening to all this, as we move forward, efforts should be made to strengthen this office, because ultimately it's going to be the office that will help all of us in terms of managing, keeping track, monitoring, disposing of. For instance, when government properties are overused, how do we dispose of them? Well, I know of auctions of vehicles. How are they auctioned is another political issue. You see, so there are so many things, and we cannot run our country like that. That's why when I heard of this office being set up, I was delighted. But unfortunately, we are yet to know how empowered you are to do the kind of job that you need to do, not just for government, but for the state. Because we're talking about state properties here.
Yeah, but you see, let's also be mindful of the fact that we are building a system. And as we all understand, we would continue to resolve the challenges as we go on. And that is why it's important that now also, what was not in the old law that is good is that we've now given the AG also the power to make legislative instruments to guide and govern some of these things that have not been catered for here. So I don't think that a lot of this thing is lost. Hope is lost yet. He's come into the new system. He's developed good. Thankfully, he's developing something like that. I am a bit worried about the bit of about computers and things like that, because I think that an organization like GIFEC should be able to flood your outfit with 100 computers for all the officers to get computers. But I think that moving forward, now that you are bringing this, and it's good, I found it very courageous that he held a press conference the last time and started, outlining some of the challenges that he have. I mean,
we'll definitely get to the challenges that he has.
It's important because then it gives all of us the opportunity to chip in a little bit, and then we understand the problems as it is. Because, like you said, we are only trying to make the system better, but we cannot make it best in one day.
Well, we can't make it best in one day. These are the words of Honorable George Lowe. Now we go for a short break. When we return, we'll look at the challenges that the Administrator General faces. This is Eye on the Seat on TV3 and also live on 3FM 92.7, and I am Winston Amwa. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back from the break, and thanks for staying with us. This is Eye on the Seat on TV3, and Eye on the Seat is sponsored by TV3 Network Limited with support from Star Ghana. Star Ghana, strengthening transparency, accountability, and responsiveness through transformational national development and accountable public services for all Ghanaians. So we're talking about the Presidential Transition Amendment Bill and, issues of transition. This evening we've been joined by the Administrator General, Mr. David Yara, Professor Bafo Ajimendu, as well as Honorable George Lowe. So, Honorable, you're talking about the fact that we're making it better and not best, but we should be aiming at making it the best.
But that is the whole point. But I'm saying that you can't start a race and end at the same point, at the same time. We've introduced a new system to make our transition better. We are looking for international best practices, but they all don't happen in a day. Every day you learn something new from some place. As we go along, people will learn from us, we'll learn from others. And therefore, I believe that the thought of making our transition better in itself is something we must applaud. And moving forward, whatever contributions that we can make, we should make them as the time. Because look, this, I'm sure maybe by the next election or 2 elections from now, we may be needing some more amendment because we found better ways of doing things. For me, unfortunately, because of time constraints, we may be concentrating on a smooth transition. I'm sure beyond that, the Administrator General is a permanent fixture in our governance system, and therefore we would have the opportunity to expand the scope of capacity that they need to operate. So all is not lost, and I think that we should be happy that we've kick-started the process at all, and that's after the last transition, we have had the opportunity again to look at our laws and think that we need to tweak it a bit to make it better. I'm sure we'll keep doing those changes as and when it becomes necessary. For now, I believe in the main that this will carry us over, but that is not the end of the road. Once we are carried over, the new team that comes in should spend some time also trying to see how best, because it's all about state record keeping. It's not about who is coming in or who is going out. It's about accounting for property that belongs to the state and how we would optimize its efficient use for national development. Right. That is the whole thinking behind this transition process. And of course, we are also doing this to take away the acrimony that comes with it. Where somebody is driving in the middle of a road and security people pick him up because he's driving a government car and it's no longer a government office. All these things we want to water down. As much as possible, people should walk in and out of office. Wasn't it beautiful when the last British Prime Minister packed these things and left? Yeah. And we didn't have any hullabaloo about any...
And no car followed him.
Yeah, I think that those are the things we are aiming at, where people come in and leave without fanfare, and the nation continues and we progress.
Interestingly, in his case, the moment there was a new Prime Minister sworn in, he packed out. But we have made a provision for 1 month, within 1 month, and latest 3 months. Clearly, some will say that's a long time. Is it, Professor Bafo Ajimendu?
There is a difference between that and the President and the Vice President. They have to leave 48 hours before the new one comes in. As soon as the election results are announced, the President has 48 hours to leave the presidential lodge. Find out. I think that's something.
It's not here.
I saw it.
But he's still, but he's still president.
So in other,
once you announce result, he's still president.
Yeah. Again.
Yes, he's still president. So why do you get him out?
I agree, but we need to.
I have seen that as per in the reports.
It's not clear to me now, but I think it's right. We need to check on that because you are president until the new one swears in.
Yeah.
And one of the beauties that perhaps most of us missed in 2008 or 2009, sorry.
2009, yes.
You know, Kufuor walks in to the the castle as president. He left as former president. The car that he rode to that ground with the coat of arms, as soon as it was announced that the new president has been sworn in, that thing was removed and put on the new president's car. So he went home without that.
In fact, he didn't even drive there as president.
Exactly. No, he wasn't a president.
At that time,
precisely.
His mandate had expired.
Precisely. And that beauty is what I think we're trying to talk about here, how we have that kind of transition without any hitches. Because you know your term is up. So if you're a minister and you are no longer the minister, in fact, you don't need that Administrator General to tell you, this house doesn't belong to you. So pack up and go. But again, Ghanaian as we are, at times we take undue advantage of
but
these
you
kind
work,
of
I mean, if you are a minister, or if you are a president, at least I know that of ministers, if you are a minister, you walk in there, and everything is provided for you.
That's correct.
You go into the house with your clothes and a few belongings.
Yes.
So when your government loses office and you know you're supposed to leave, within the period of the declaration of the results and the swearing in of a new president, that should be enough time for you to pack out.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, again, is the way we do things. Let's not miss one point, that even when we started talking about the year 2000, where we were supposed to have had one of the most acrimonious changeovers, Jerry Rawlings walked out of the castle long before.
Exactly, because,
ended.
I mean...
You know, and I believe that goes for many people. I mean, I am leaving Parliament, and already those things that I think I don't need immediately, you are packing them away. So maybe on the day that you think that you want to leave, you carry a file and you walk. And I also, in fact, I even find it very funny when we talk about somebody's going to retirement, you give him 3 months to check.
Yeah, exactly.
3 months or 6 months to your retirement, the letter comes to you and says, Master, on this day you are retiring. So why are you not preparing? Exactly. We don't prepare for anything, and that is the problem. I believe that 7th December, when we've held our elections, the president knows whether he's in or he's out. And therefore, anybody who wants to avoid this kind of any embarrassment at all would be checking out immediately, you know. And if you're a minister, you are giving out your handing over notes. You live as skeletal as possible, particularly when your government has been voted out. You know there's no way you are going to be retained. So what are you waiting for?
So
when your government has been retained, if I were you, I would live as skeletal as possible.
It may not be reappointed.
Yeah, it may not be reappointed. So we can do these things ourselves without necessarily having a law to tell us that check out at this time. Or
and
check
for me, I mean, and that's the more reason why others argue that. So if you have a law that says, oh, within 1 month, latest 3 months, yes, it's encouraging people to spend more time in there. When you know, for instance, if you're a minister, you walk into, I mean, when you're made a minister, you walk in there, into that apartment, there's everything you need. You walk in with your clothes and a few things that you feel, okay, I want to add this to
Having been a minister before, I'm not too sure in contemporary times you get it as easy as...
Mr. Yaro has been a chief director before. He knows that the minister walks in with his clothes. And a few belongings. And so clearly, that's it.
You know, these days it's a bit different.
Mr. Yaro, you know that ministers would walk in with their clothes and everything is in there. So if you're leaving, why do I need to give you a month, within a month, latest 3 months?
Well, sometimes the peculiarity of the situation, you know, I remember I was talking to, even he was a district chief executive I worked with, and then he was removed from office. They announced his removal. He didn't know where to go. And I said, oh, why won't you go to the compound? I said, Master, having stayed as a district chief executive, I haven't made any improvement on my room there. Even my brother has moved into my room. I haven't built a house. And this thing has suddenly come. Where am I going? You know, so I had to meet the staff to see what we could do for him for at least 1 month, to be able to secure a private to rent. So it depends. There are peculiar situations like that. But generally, as we said, you know, we should all be preparing towards...
Exactly the point. I've been talking about you having been, you know, when, just by the way, when David Cameron had decided to quit as Prime Minister, I saw an article, I think it was done in a Telegraph. you know, looking at where he lived as British Prime Minister and which areas he would like to live in, because he'd actually rented out his house, hoping that he was going to be Prime Minister for the next 5 years. And so he rents out his house, and now he decides to quit as Prime Minister. So they were now looking at it and saying, okay, so where could he go to? And the moment he left, he found a place to move. Because he realized that, no, this is the time. I need to leave. Okay, maybe we should be looking at these things, but yes,
the issue is what the Honorable MP said. Ghanaians take things for granted. That's simple. I mean, because if you know you are going to leave office, why should somebody come and tell you? The 3 months certainly is excessive, but it's just the nature of us. You know, we get some free things and we think it's ours.
But we're encouraging that nature.
And this law seems to be encouraging it by giving 3 months as a maximum period to stay in a government bungalow. I can understand those isolated cases where individuals, whether they were responsible or circumstances simply could not allow them to maintain their own homes when they were in a private life. But I think this law, if we publicize these provisions, it will help to again educate public officers that, look, this is not for you, time comes you have to leave. Gradually, people will learn that you don't wait until you are kicked out before you go.
Okay. So, Mr. Yaro, yes, we have the amended bill. We are waiting the president's assent. But for you as Administrator General and head of the Presidential Estate Unit, what are the challenges that are facing you now, and how can that affect the smooth transition?
Yes, thank you. In fact, like Honorable said, we are dealing with a transition bill, and we are also in a transition as far as these arrangements are concerned. I remember the first time even I assumed office, I met my staff, we looked at all this, and they were complaining, Chief, you must do something, because there was a letter I wrote. How to dispatch the letter was a problem.
How many staff members do you have?
Now, I will come to that. But I said, okay, you try and send this letter within 2 days, and at least. He said, but how do I do it, Chief? You know this. I said, okay, go and take an Okada and go. Take this and go and take. And I told them that these are the problems of people who are pioneers. You are normally a scapegoat to get the system going. So there are actually problems. But as I said, one of my challenges actually is personnel. Because, as you said, we are careful not to build a bureaucracy. But at the same time, I must have competent people who can help me. Right now, my office, until I came, the office of my payroll, we have just 2 officers, a planning officer and a budget officer. So we had to rely on head of civil service to give me 1 director, a driver, and an executive officer. So that is all, you know. But I need, that's why I had to call the press conference. At least I need a publicity officer who can let the public know what my office is about. I need an IT specialist who can do this. I need a human resource, because even though I have just a few things, I'm a payroll center. So preparing of PVs, whatnot. So I need an accounting officer. So last year there was an attempt to recruit just a few. It didn't work. This year I hope now maybe Minister of Finance will consent. I've asked for 5 officers.
We're almost ending the year.
Yes, but if I get them for next year, that's okay. 5 officers, because all those I mentioned are on secondment. They can be recalled back to head of civil service. And what do I do? So that is one. I have a problem of staffing, you know. Then the second one, which is the most pressing, which I attacked, is movement vehicles. This important office hasn't got a single vehicle.
But you have a driver.
Yes, as I said, we were anticipating, in fact, 2012, Parliament quickly approved 3 vehicles to be bought for the office. And because of the processes going on at Ministry of Finance, it was being delayed. So that then Administrator General went and negotiated with Gamot that, please, Parliament has approved the money for these vehicles, so give them to me on credit so that we'll process and pay. So the people said, okay, at least I can give you 1 vehicle, but as for the saloon car, we'll keep it. I'll give you the 4-wheel. Then when you come to pay, I'll release all the other vehicles to you. Then that was the end. Final Finance said there was no money. And when they took the vehicle for first servicing, of course, the government seized it. And so by that time, I had asked for a driver in anticipation. I didn't want to wait. Vehicles would come, and again say you didn't prepare.
So the driver is now there, but doesn't have anything
yes,
to do.
you know, this. So, but I left him there because he's just retiring at the end of this year. Otherwise, I would have returned him to base to be reassigned. So the first thing is movement of vehicles. We don't have a single vehicle. And I was just giving an example of, I was saying that a place like Asiedu Lodge, for example, I was thinking that just before the new president is sworn in, I should be able to go there to look at what inventory they had given me. Then after the expiry date of the president, I'll go again and see whether what I was given 4 years ago, they are there. But I can't go to Asiedu Lodge. I don't have the means, you know. So that is the other challenge that I have. But the other ones, you know, this, and I said also that because we are to build a database of all government properties, I need a software that can hook me to all the ministries, departments, and organizations. That is a financial issue.
So how do you make that movement? How do you go about your job?
So at a telephone, or somebody takes an Okada or walks across.
Okada?
Yes, you know, or taxi. You know, that's why I said I myself, I come to office either in a taxi or a trotro, or most of the time I use my wife's borrowed car, which I'm using, because I don't have an official car. In fact, that car, I bought it in anticipation of retirement. Then later I was given a contract with the Ministry of Chieftaincy and Traditional Affairs. So I said, why? Once with the ministry, I'll be given an official vehicle. So my wife, I've given this to you. So I gave it to her. Now, after that, I had to surrender the official vehicle, and I was stranded. So I had to go back again and beg her that I'm not taking it from you, but allow me to be using it until. And he said, but Administrator General now higher than a chief director, what is happening? And I said, well, these are the teething problems. I hope it will be solved. But that's this. But I think it's taking quite too long, you know, almost the first Administrator General was there for almost a year and something before he passed off. I'm almost getting to 2 years, a year and 7 months. So at least, you know, we should be distant. But I understand the situation, as you say, it's financing. When we went for budget hearing, it was explained that all the organizations subsisting on office or government machinery will not be allowed to buy vehicles. So since 2012, no budget allocation has been given to any of us. But I said no. The other agencies were in existence, so they would have bought some vehicles. Yeah. My agency is new. Okay. So an exception should be made for me to get this thing. So that is that. But as I said, the other challenge is this, is this system software that I want so that I can, you know, do this, be able to hook to other areas to this thing. But the other thing is that I'm hoping that the LI will take note of that. That is, one has been resolved, the ability to, you know, enforce laws, and then the membership and other petty things. So,
Prof, clearly there's a challenge. And so if the Administrator General has all these challenges, what does it mean for our transition?
It's a huge challenge. As I was listening to him, I don't know what was going through my mind. I was just shocked, you know, to be using a wife's vehicle to perform state duty. I mean, that's incredible.
This is a borrowed vehicle from the wife. It's more or less his vehicle.
Oh, no. He said it's a wife vehicle.
Oh, no, he gave it to the wife.
No. He said that he gave it to the wife. Now he's taking it back so he can perform state duties. Well, let's address what needs to be done to ensure smooth transition, as you said, because naturally, I'm sure after the transition, this or the next government would have to take a serious note of this to rectify before perhaps the next transition. But I think it's important, since we have a very short period, to focus almost exclusively on the actual political transition and matters arising. Because in terms of the state assets, having inventory and all that, I think it's going to take a long time. If it doesn't have the computer systems in place.
So when you say the actual political transition, what do you mean?
The core ministries, handover notes that should be done, the Flagstaff House handover notes that must be done. Some key assets of state that the presidency controls that must be handed over to the next government. These are the key ones, political transition. But I think the larger transition that we've been discussing, that I believe is impossible with this kind of situation that the Administrator General is in, can be deferred until this is done. So hopefully, with your little staff, maybe you can seek extra hands in terms of support to be able to manage the political transition. And thereafter, mount some kind of campaign, get some civil society groups behind you. Like the MP said, you are courageous to come out to share your difficulties. Most appointees will not do that for fear of offending government, because right now you're exposing a serious defect in the way we allocate resources to ensure that institutions as big as yours can also function. But I think we just focus on the transition, and then let's see how you can mobilize support for the future government, the same or whoever comes to make sure that this Administrator General's position is well empowered to do his work.
Let me
yes,
that,
briefly.
No, with the arrangement we have made up to date, the shortcomings of the Administrator General's office will not affect the smooth transition.
Exactly.
As you know, as I said, in the wisdom of the framers of the Act, it was in two parts. We had the transition team, which is ad hoc, as I said, within they will go. Then we had the estates unit, which is a permanent feature. So since 2012, we've been building data. You know, we have these challenges, but that doesn't mean that we don't have data. We can tell you how many GV vehicles we have in the system if we open the computer, how many bungalows are there, the furnishing even in some of the bungalows, you know. So generally, our shortcomings will not have any serious listen in the transition.
Will not affect the transition
at all. What may affect
so we can be rest assured we have a good transition.
As far as my office is concerned, I was telling Honorable, more than 50% of work that my office is supposed to do, we have done that. But the important thing is the handing over notes. And if you saw the processes I took, as I said, first, we came up with a new template. I invited all chief directors and regional coordinating directors. We looked at it. They gave their inputs. I made them to bring draft handing over notes. I set up a quality assurance team with some benchmarks. We looked at them, did everything. Then we made them to go back and refine. And 2 weeks ago, they came finally, and we finished. Before I told them that now, finish this to the office of the president. So with the hand, and the handing over notes is 3/4 of what I need.
So yes. the political transition itself is done?
Yes.
We don't have a problem?
No, we don't have a problem at all.
I mean, what is left is the usual little things, which you could close our eyes and say they don't really matter.
Yeah. Come on, you don't close the eyes, but at the right time you open the eyes.
If I close my eyes forever, I'll finally become blind. So I'll close small, and then immediately after that, I'll open up again.
Yeah, Honorable, on that bit, yes.
Well, I mean, I believe that, again, it's important that the Administrator Generals come to the fore with the challenges that they have. Maybe being a new creature, we haven't come to terms with its importance. But now that we all are getting close to the transition, I'm sure that their role will come up strongly, and that again would give all of us the impetus to fight with them to get what they need to do their work. Like I keep saying, for me, I don't see them as a transition tool. We are all better off knowing that this is what we have as a state, and this is how we are using it. And therefore, all of us have a duty to make it, or to use it efficiently. It saves us vital resources which we use to do other developmental. So maybe if he's able to get his PR session in place, they will need to do a lot more work to make the public understand what they stand for. So there's work to be done, no two ways about it. And I am confident that as we soldier on, all the right facilities will be made available to him, particularly the software and vehicle for movement and other allied needs that he needs, and it should be done. But suffice it to say that I am so
finally,
confident that yes, we would have a transition, and it will be devoid of some of the things that we saw in the past. You know, now that we've given them a definite period and every number of people, this issue of Konum tea and all those things will not happen. You remember in the past, people accused the transitional team of a bunch of tea drinking squad.
Yes.
And
when the budget for the team came out, yes.
And things like that. I believe that now the budget will be more manageable, and
okay.
When the number is small, efficiency comes in, and I'm sure that within the 6 weeks, we would have a smooth run.
All right, so unfortunately that's all time would allow us. I'll take your comments as your last comments. That's Mr. David Yaro and Professor Bafo Agyemang-Duah. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on Eye on the Seat. Now, Eye on the Seat is sponsored by TV3 Network with support from Star Ghana, strengthening transparency, accountability, and responsiveness through transformational national development and accountable public services for all Ghanaians. Winston Amwa, and that's all from us this evening. Make sure you make a date with me tomorrow morning on Sunrise on 3FM 92.7 from 5:50 to 10 a.m. Have a lovely evening. We're out.